And this? Oh, yeah.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. This is such a wonderful crowd. My name is Amali, and I'm the events director here at Books Are Magic. So, we are so excited to have Laurie Woolever and Helen Cho with us tonight to celebrate the launch of Laurie's debut memoir, Care and Feeding, an incredibly crafted and candid account of Laurie's many roles in the chaotic, ever-changing food industry, navigating that male-dominated space as a woman and a mother, and reckoning with the lasting presence of two of the most powerful men in the business and her relationships with each of them. It's a wonderful, gripping book, and to accompany it, I have to shout out the incredible interview featured in the New York Times between Laurie and writer Julia Moskin. If you haven't read that yet, please do. Before I introduce our two guests properly, I just have a few logistics to point out for how tonight's event is going to go. First, we will be doing a hand-raised audience Q&A towards the end of the discussion, so please start thinking of questions to ask and hold on to them. After the talk tonight, Laurie will be around to sign and personalize your books out the alcove next to where you checked in. We'll let you know where and when to start lining up for that. And finally, if you're joining us virtually on the YouTube live stream, we would love to encourage you to buy a copy of Care and Feeding online using the link in the live stream description. Okay. I'm going to read some quick bios and then we're going to get right into it. Laurie Woolever is a writer and editor. She spent nearly a decade assisting Anthony Bourdain, with whom she co-authored the cookbook Appetites and the book World Travel. She's written about food and travel for numerous publications, including the New York Times, GQ, and Food and Wine. She is also the New York Times bestselling author of Bourdain, the definitive oral biography. And as I mentioned earlier, Helen Cho joins Laurie in conversation tonight. Helen is a Korean-American two-time Emmy Award-nominated director, producer, and showrunner from New York City. She is best known for her work on the critically acclaimed series Anthony Bourdain, Parts Unknown, My Next Guest Needs No Introduction with David Letterman, and United States of America with W. Cameron Bell. That's all from me. Please join me in giving Laurie and Helen a very warm welcome.
Hello. Thank you guys all for being here. Hi, Laurie.
I like how you're gripping the mic.
Oh, sorry. Is it like should I drop some rhymes?
Yeah.
Good?
Okay.
I think we'll begin by,
All right. I'm going to start with a quick reading from the very beginning of the book, from chapter 1, which is called Hayseed. "You look like a complete fucking hayseed," said the man conducting the job interview. "What's your story?" My story is fuck you, I thought, then forced a polite little laugh and said, "I guess my story is that I just graduated from college and I want to be a writer." It was 1996. The Unabomber was in custody. The U.S. economy was unstoppable, and all the girls were dancing to the AOL dial-up modem sound, wearing Wonder Bras and clear acetate pumps. I didn't think I was a hayseed until this man said it, but then it felt painfully true. Sitting in this man's office, I was unaware of the actual visible seeds in my hair, picked up earlier that day on the sprawling campus of Brooklyn Botanic Garden, BBG, where I was an intern. I wore an ill-fitting navy blue pantsuit, which constituted the entirety of my job interview wardrobe. Each morning, while I raked and mulched and mowed and weeded outdoors, the suit's synthetic fabric greedily absorbed all the complicated scents inside the BBG employee locker room. In college, I had tried to obscure my small-town roots with various gestures of world weariness, reading Anais Nin, smoking unfiltered cigarettes, getting diagnosed with mild clinical depression. But here in Midtown Manhattan, the man across the desk saw me for who I was, a shy, soft-bodied 22-year-old with a limited skill set. He may not have seen that I loved getting drunk and high and watching cable television, that I wanted a creatively fulfilling career and to be passionately loved, or at least lavishly validated, and had no idea what to do about it. After multiple fruitless interviews like this one, during which there were typing tests to fail and unanswerable questions about my strengths, weaknesses, and proficiency with Lotus 123 and Excel, I got offered a receptionist job at a financial recruiting firm, whatever that meant. They told me that the opportunity was contingent on my joining a gym, which I realized was code for losing weight, so I passed. I didn't yet understand why I had to be thinner, which is to say more attractive, to answer phones and open mail in an office full of men. I then had two promising interviews for a household cook job, first with an agency rep and then with the employer, who then hired someone with more experience. It was all quietly excruciating, especially having to go back to BBG each morning and weed whack along Flatbush Avenue while people drove by, occasionally throwing full diapers or almost empty drink cans out their car windows. I was living in an illegal basement apartment in deep South Brooklyn, beneath my landlord's own sprawling Victorian house, which he shared with his wife, their two teenagers, and a golden retriever named Billy, who was friendly and sweet, but also a loud and unpredictable nighttime barker. The best thing about the apartment was the rent, which was $350 a month. The bathroom was spacious and well lit with pleasing pink tiles and a pink toilet and sink, which I liked very much. The worst thing about it was everything else, especially that it was presently my home, inhabited by me. The apartment was only marginally apartment-like, with weak fluorescent lighting mounted into a drop ceiling, held up by unpainted cinder block walls. The spiders were bold and numerous. The mice were timid, but made their numbers known by their copious leavings. It was, as befits a basement, dark and damp, even during the hottest and driest summer afternoons. On move-in day, my older sister drove me and my stuff down from our parents' house upstate, and within 10 minutes of our arrival, she had an allergy attack so intense that she could barely breathe. She left, wheezing heavily, while most of my stuff was still stacked in the driveway. Shortly after I moved in, there was a heavy rainstorm that sent rivulets of dirty water under the bolt-locked back door and into the nearby closet, where I'd stacked my winter clothes and shoes and some books. Eventually, the puddles subsided, but never having experienced a flood, I didn't fully grasp that all of my shit had gotten wet and would soon be engulfed by mildew. There was no separate means of egress to the basement. To get in or out, I had to pass through the family's living room and front door. I tried to be discreet and polite with my comings and goings, even the one Sunday morning following an after-hours party at an East Village club called Save the Robots, where I discovered how much more vodka I could drink while on cocaine. My new jeans were wet with my own fresh pee, and I crept inside, clutching a handbag into which I'd quietly vomited bile and peach-flavored Snapple on the train from Manhattan. Sorry. I used to be really gross. The landlord himself was neither discreet nor polite. One weekend morning, as I exited up the stairs and through the living room to the front door on my way to work, he was right there, a few feet from the basement door, naked except for his flip-flops, fastening a collar and leash around Billy the dog's furry golden neck. I said nothing, didn't make eye contact, just kept going, down the steps and onto the sidewalk, muttering, oh my God, over and over, until I got to the subway platform. Again, this was 1996. I didn't have a cell phone, so it was just me, talking to myself about having seen my landlord's flaccid dick bobbling weakly in the morning light. I wondered if he'd had a robe close at hand as I waited for the train. I thought about his long balls and his droopy little boobs as I raked up cut grass. I thought again, just briefly, about his wrinkly dick during my lunch break when I took a stack of quarters to the employee payphone and called my answering machine to see if my recent manic resume faxing would yield any new interviews or offers. There were no new messages, which made me feel like a bit of a failure. I didn't yet understand that while I was lonely and broke, insecure and underemployed, and without a clear vision of what success might look like, I was actually doing okay. I was alive and I had a bachelor's degree. I had seen an unwanted dick in an unexpected place, so now I had that story to tell. I had an apartment and a job, such as they were. I had my friend and classmate Alejandro, who lived in Manhattan and already knew from his adventures in the after hours scene how to get and crucially share cocaine. And I already knew that when drug sick and still drunk on the train, it was best to vomit into your handbag if you had the option. I'll leave it there.
I'll just say, if you guys were wincing at that section, you guys are in for a ride with this book. Yeah, I guess like I felt like I knew you, Laurie, and now I'm very disturbed and scared of you because I feel like Laurie can write about anything and make it exciting and terrifying and hilarious. I think one of the things that really struck me about the book was that you were so honest with yourself, and just about it really made me feel seen as just like we're all just piles of meat and bones with like weird wants and desires and just like figuring shit out. And I guess I there were parts in the book where you were being honest with what you wanted as in terms of a career and wanting to write for a magazine. When did you decide, I don't know, I guess like when were you honest with yourself about wanting to put out a memoir? Like I've always known you to write for other people's magazines and cookbooks. So yeah, I guess like when was that decision, or how was that decision sort of made?
Well, I think as I say in the book, I've kind of been writing this in my head for a very long time. Maybe not with the idea that it would be a memoir, but something, trying to document the experiences that I've had, the people that I've known, the feelings, the thoughts, all of the stuff that's in my head. I've always wanted to be a writer, right? So I think it took a long time to sort of feel that I was allowed to write a memoir, that it wasn't a completely obnoxious thing for a person of my age. And I guess I'm not young anymore, so I'm allowed to write a memoir, but it took a long time.
Wait, is there a certain age that you have to be to write a memoir?
I think it's obnoxious. I mean, whatever. I mean, if anyone here wrote a memoir in their 20s, like God bless, but it's a little, you have to have had some extraordinary experiences to write a memoir at a very young age. Again, like, don't come at me. But so I think it took some time to have the confidence to be like, I've got something to say. And then there's the thought of, is it autofiction? Is it a book of essays? Is it a memoir? And I settled on memoir for various reasons. It felt like the most natural form for me. Honestly, you get a much bigger advance when you write a memoir than you do if you write a collection of essays. And that's what I pay my agent 15% for, is to give me that kind of advice. So everything kind of fell into place where it made sense. But it was, I'd say, in the last 5 years.
What is it? I feel like I've seen your name on covers grow every book. It's like slightly getting larger. And this, by the way, this book is insane. If you guys haven't started reading it, I almost did not bring this because it makes me look like a crazy person. But I feel like
she's got about 65 tabs.
I think it's like every page I'm just like, holy shit, Laurie, like what? But yeah, so I guess I've also known you as somebody who is, I mean, we're friends, and like when we talk, I hear your voice and like your sort of savage sense of humor. It's just, but I guess like I've always also known you as somebody who likes to disappear. You were like the queen of the Irish goodbye. Like when you came with us to Hong Kong, you were nowhere to be found on our shoot days. And so I'm wondering, and for me as somebody who also works behind the scene, like the idea of being so front and center, I know it's ironic because I'm here, but it's very uncomfortable. And so I'm wondering, like, what does that feel like for someone who's like kept so many secrets and other people's stories to like now be at the center of it, and center yourself in this book and publicly,
Yeah, it's now I'm freaking out.
Well, I know. I think it's interesting that for someone who's done that, your choice for your memoir is like everything's on the table.
Yeah.
Like sexcapades, divorce, like my every single, it feels like I was in your head and in your journals. It was felt very
Yeah.
revealing. So yeah.
Yeah, well, I think there's a difference between, I mean, I was alone and hiding, writing this book, right? And I think after tonight and after the book tour and after the press, interest goes away, then I'll can go back to being, I can walk around and be unknown, and that is great. That's how I, prefer to live. But
So you think
well,
things are about to change.
but I think that, I mean, where this is the format that I feel comfortable in sharing all this stuff. But it is scary, and it is, it's very personal. I don't always behave very well. I make a lot of bad decisions in the book, but that's what makes it an interesting book, I think. I mean, if I
It's
don't know.
juicy as hell.
It's
That's for sure.
yeah. If I'm going to have these experiences, I'm going to get the bruises and the whatever the scars. I can at least share them, maybe entertain people, maybe make people feel a little bit seen, or give them some sense that what they've done is not, they're not alone. Or if somebody is thinking about maybe they want to examine their relationship with drugs and alcohol, there's something here that might spark a conversation for them. So yeah, I'm happy to take a little bit of a risk and expose myself for the for the page.
I do think it's sort of like a ink blot kind of book where you read it and there's something that everyone can take away from it, whether it's like dealing with the man, at work, or like just behaving badly, like you said, or I mean, it's not from my own experience, but just saying.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I mean, as much as it's my specific story and there are specific, very well-known figures that I talk about in the book, it's also, there are a lot of universal themes of parenting, love, marriage, sex, work, fear, imposter syndrome, ambition. So hopefully there's something that will resonate with a lot of different readers.
It was also because I know you, and she did change some of the names of the book, but I think there were events in the book that I was like at, and I know some of these people who were there, and I'm sure they would recognize themselves in some of the pages. So, and I know you and I had talked about some of the things that were written in the book, but there were also things that I didn't know was going to be in the book. So I was wondering how you approached writing about like these like very deeply personal stories that involve people that are both like around, and then there were a few people who also had passed away. And so, how did you what was your approach in telling those stories?
Yeah, well, I wanted to be careful to keep it from my first person perspective for the most part. If there was a reason to talk about something that I had heard or that was common knowledge, then that's also part of the storytelling. But I really, as a memoir, I think it's important to make it from my perspective and not do a lot of gossip or secondhand whatever. So that's one starting point, and then also to be careful to hold myself to the same standard that I'm holding other people. So I get a couple of shots at people who I think didn't behave very well, but I'm also pretty hard on myself and pretty forthcoming about the bad decisions I made, the people that I hurt, the mistakes I made along the way. So that was another a touch point. And then just to really, I will say that the most helpful book I read in preparing to write this book was Mary Karr's The Art of Memoir. And she covers all of the topics, all the different things that you might want to know about how to write a memoir. And what I read again and again was how to write about people in your life, how to do it sensitively and give them the opportunity to read what you've written about them and make sure that you are remembering things accurately, that they don't feel that they've been hurt. So I tried to do that and gave some people the chance to weigh in. Not that many, but yeah. And to protect people's privacy, and not to, if I'm going to put something in a salacious detail, it's got to serve the narrative and also be, something that's true and that isn't gratuitously hurtful.
What did you pull? Like, did you have? I know that journaling is something that you've always done, right? What can you talk about the sort of sources and stuff that you pulled from or drew from? Do you just have like a photographic memory? Because there are lots of details in this book that are like It's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do have a really good memory, I have to say. I
Yeah,
even
that's
for
terrifying.
all of the damage that I did to myself with drinking and smoking a ton of pot, like I somehow still have a pretty good memory. But I also was a very good journal keeper, diary keeper. I have often used email as sort of a form of letter writing, and so and not as much anymore, but certainly in the time period in the late 90s, 2000s, probably up until the time that I had a kid, and then I just had less time to do anything. But I would routinely send an email to a friend, even someone that might live in my neighborhood that I would see, just saying, oh, this is this crazy thing that happened last night, or this is what's going on with me. And then I have all of that. So I have this like vast electronic record of what I was thinking, who I was spending time with, what I was doing, and in some cases, other people's responses. So there's a lot of detail to be mined in there. And then in some cases, it was like, all right, well, I know that this was the time period. What might I have been watching? Like I don't really remember that I was watching Weird Al Yankovic Behind the Music, on a certain date, but I know that, okay, well, that was on the VH1 road. It's like the internet makes it also very easy for you to verify these little details and shade things in. But as far as the stuff with the people, all of the events, the conversations, you reconstruct conversations as best you can. All of that is, was either in my head or I would check in with friends who I was spending time with at that time and sort of, hey, do you remember when this happened? And do you have anything to add to it? Or just, am I right in thinking, things unfolded in XYZ way?
One of the other things that I thought was really interesting was this is mentioned a few times throughout the book, but at different parts of your life. But you mention other authors that you're jealous of in terms of, early on you mentioned, I can't believe that this person, their skill, their sharp voice, like the confidence to like put something out that people would even find worth publishing. And then later on, some other authors that you kind of also like and were envious of. And it's really interesting when I read this because this feels very, very much your voice. Like the voice is really, really strong, and all the things I think that you were, envious of these other people. Like I'm envious of that as well. And I think for anyone in the creative field starting out, a common thing that you might do is like look to other references. And you mentioned reading Mary Carr's book. I'm curious, like how did you kind of find your voice or like hone your voice and not lose that with all these like inputs and like noises of other successful memoirs or like things that you really looked up to?
I wish I had a smart answer for you. I don't know. I think I've always had a voice. I mean, I did not always have a great amount of skill as a writer. I think I used to overwrite. I used to be sort of, I would try and be funny and entertaining and put in a million details at the expense of being honest or really telling a compelling story. But I think I always did have a voice for whatever that's worth. That's what some English teacher told me in high school. So
wow, that early. Like,
yeah.
Did you always know you wanted to be a writer when you were younger?
I mean, I knew I had to like have a real job, but I always was like, how can I be a writer and support myself in the world? So I don't know. I don't think I was ever in this writing this book. I don't feel that I was in danger of getting, of chameleoning other voices, because I do feel like, there's many things I'm not confident about, but my voice isn't really one of them. I do feel like that's a solid tool in my kit.
That's interesting. It's really kind of I'm not disappointed, but it's like frustrating when I see a lot of the media now, especially talking about your book, always like headline Mario and Tony, which like of course they're gonna do that because of the media, but this is like so your story, and in my mind they seem like pretty minor figures compared to just seeing more about your life. And I guess like one thing that you and I both share in common is that we've worked behind the scenes in the shadow of, yes, this like giant person, this very like public figure. And I don't know, something that I've been kind of wrestling with too, but I'm curious your take on it is like, do you ever feel like that shadow is something that we can get away from? I mean, not that maybe you don't even want to, or maybe I don't want to, but it just follows you everywhere I think we go. And there are a couple times in the book where you talk about being disappointed that your name wasn't on the cover of like the Bobo cookbook when all the work that you did on it. And then in the second issue of, or the newer sanitized cover of Appetites, where it was, they say it was an honest mistake, but your name was left off of it. And I know all the work that you did on that book as well. And so it's interesting because now it feels like it's so intertwined, and you almost like, it's like everything is a part of that. I don't know, like, can you talk a little bit about your thoughts on that and like.
Yeah, I remember saying to somebody before I started working as Tony Bourdain's assistant, I had worked for Mario Batali, and I remember saying it doesn't matter what I do for the rest of my life, like on my gravestone it'll say, and she was Mario Batali's assistant, and I thought, and it was sort of, it's like, well, it opened a million doors for me, and it's I was proud of the work that I did, et cetera, et cetera, but it felt like it doesn't matter. I could start and edit my own magazine. I could write a bunch of books, but this was always going to be a thing that people referenced to me until I started working for Tony, and then it was like, she's Tony Bourdain's assistant. And it's a mixed bag. I mean, and I don't really have a solid answer about whether or not you can ever outrun it, and then should you want to. But I think there's, for me, the question is like, do I want to keep, do I want to, and will the world let me, do something that has nothing to do with Tony? And, yes, the world will let me. Will anyone care? I don't know. And will I, and, I'm not, I don't know. It feels, I mean, you have the same experience, right? Like, you've got Tony, having worked for Tony on your resume, and that, that makes David Letterman go, oh, okay, all right, and that makes,
I don't know if it does, but
well,
maybe. Yeah.
It leads to the next job, and it's just a shorthand for that you're somebody that this person trusted. So in that way, it's like, well, great, I will always be glad to have that attached to my name. But it's the thing of like, it can be very reductive, like you said, and I'm not going to say too much about the press is the press. They know their angles. They know what their readers.
We love the press. I don't want them to shit on this book. So
they know how to
love all the press that Laurie's getting for this book.
They know how to get the attention, and they know what People Magazine wants. They're going to lead with a celebrity because it's People Magazine. Very grateful to be featured. So.
One of the other things too, and I don't want to spend too much time on Tony, but it's interesting that the last few projects that you've done with Tony, without Tony, you're not in them really. I mean, you are obviously in your writing, but like, you purposely chose to not put yourself in the oral biography with all the interviews. You did, help work on Roadrunner the film, but you were not in it. And so what was it? I was curious, like, and I don't think you and I have talked about this, but like, what was it like, writing about Tony for your book, like revisiting that? And yeah, I'm just curious.
Well, it's sort of similar to what I said earlier. I wanted to be really careful to keep it to my perspective and my experiences with Tony. And, there is the Tony that the world knows, and there's all the television and the books and everything else. And that wasn't, that I was not along for a lot of that ride. So the things that I put in the book about Tony were really about our, interactions, about my feelings about working for him, about the opportunities that he gave me. And I really I didn't want to write a tell-all about behind the scenes working for him, because honestly, it wouldn't be an interesting book, really. I mean, I've given some moments and some perspective and some, an appreciation, but I wanted to be really careful to respect his privacy, and to respect his memory, while also being really honest about the great things, the great opportunity that I had working for him, the great person that he was, the way that he was a man that, unlike some other men in the book, used his power to lift people up and to give people opportunities and to make their lives, a little bit better.
You talk about that bad man in the book, but it's not just him. It's like throughout the book, there are just men that behave badly that we all have dealt with. That's just like men in power who just, like the excerpt you read, like saying wild shit to you, like casually, and hanging out there, literally, like,
Yeah.
and it's like it's so
Naked,
casual, naked, and it's so casual, but it clearly leaves these like lasting impressions on all of us, you know,
Mhm.
and it's throughout. I mean, it's like striking, and on the road, that really resonated a lot with me of like the shit that we put up with to in pursuit of our like own dreams and goals and wants of like, you know, our careers. And yeah, I don't really have a question to that. It's just like, God damn, Laurie,
Fully
like, thank you
patriarchy.
for writing that. Seriously.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's I'm sort of hearing murmurings throughout the crowd. I think it's not an uncommon experience that, you know, we put up with a lot of shit to if you want to work in a creative field, especially, or a field that's very sought after, it's like you're going to probably put up with a measure of shit, especially if you're a woman, especially even more if you're a woman of color, I'm guessing. Yeah, it's and you know, it's maybe it's not completely reduced to, you know, men v women, but that's
that
was
true.
my experience. And there's some great men in the book too, you know, and there are not all men. Sorry, I don't know why I'm playing devil's advocate.
Classic Laurie. One of the other things that I love so much about the book is that throughout there are these sort of, again, like just messy situations that in life, that just little moments that you're just like, fuck, like, yeah, I've been in that situation, or just very normal things that are uncomfortable that you just have to do, and or you're just like witnessing with really like weird shit happening in front of you, and you're like, oh my God, how did I get here? And like the thing that is like the saving grace, I think, through it all is that there's like key sort of like friends or just like people who are with you in these moments that just keep you sane. And yeah, I guess like, can you talk a little bit about like, I don't know, like I guess the power of like friendship too in those moments, and like how it's kept you, you know, in all of these different moments of your life,
Yeah.
going. Because I think for me personally, that was something that also resonated with me, was like in these uncomfortable, awkward, strange moments, like the people who really save you when, you know, maybe not your chosen family even is like, or not your real family is like the chosen family that you keep around, you know?
Yeah, well, there's, you know, nothing like your colleagues when you're working in a restaurant, you know, or I'm on a television shoot, right? I mean, that high pressure thing, and you're just like, did you see that? Can you fucking believe this? Like, that's to have somebody that you can say the darkest, weirdest shit to and laugh about, or something horrible has happened, but you can, you know, make a joke, or, you know, there's this thing I write about in the book where there Mario had a stack of photos of like, you know, press photos for himself where he was doing kind of finger guns, and I just took it without even thinking, just took it and wrote free breast exams, you know, and showed it to like all the women that I worked with, because it was like, right, am I right, you know? And then I was like, give me that, let me put that, like, let's not get caught with this, you know? But it's like they're just a little pressure valve release, you know. Yeah,
there were also other kind of like petty things that you did in there that were like amazing, like just like leaving a job in a like particular way that I won't spoil it for you, but like, man.
Yeah, twice I left a job in a really petty way. So I was young. Girl.
One of the other things too I was curious about was like, were there a lot of like female, I mean, you talk about your mom a lot, and when I read this book, I laughed my ass off. I cried a few times, and not, you know, just in like the Tony parts. Like there were so many pieces in here that were really moving, and a big part of that was, I think, talking about your mom too. And I don't know, I hear a lot of her voice as well. I never met your mom, but just her observations on shit that were like, she like loved, I guess, like just shitting on other people.
She's
and
such
like,
a shit talker, my mom.
Yeah.
I really learned a lot from her.
But I was curious about like, were there other female figures like that in your life that you looked up to in the fields that you wanted to work in, or like
talking.
in the field of shit talking? Like which housewives?
Yeah. There were not. I didn't really have any female bosses. There was one woman that I started working with on a book that I very quickly got fired from that job. I have to say that I will take responsibility for not seeking out female bosses when there were opportunities for me to talk to women about maybe working for them. I didn't know how to navigate that power dynamic. In some ways, as much as there's, things that happened that are not great in power dynamics with men, I felt that I at least understood what was expected of me and how to navigate that. And I think I probably, missed out by not having a female boss. But maybe I think there's something too where it's like, I kind of know what to expect from men, and maybe I'm not going to be,
Interesting.
I'm not going to be disappointed because I'm not going to expect that much. And I think it hurts more if you have a normal, human, fallible female boss who sometimes is an asshole. And then it's like, oh, wait, you too? Like, it's not just men. So I think there's a little bit of self-protection in there of kind of avoiding those situations. And I think it's hard to be a boss. That's what I don't think I knew at all as a young person, is like, it's actually hard to manage people also and do a good job, get what you need to get done, and do right by people. Like, I don't think I ever want to do that. It seems really hard, like I'll never hire anybody, I don't think. And A, because I can't afford it, but B, also because like, I don't want to be a bad boss.
You talked about the power dynamics, but one thing that also I think resonated a lot with me was just looking at, this idea of this career that you wanted as like this shiny machine that you so badly wanted to be a part of, that you felt was like off limits to that. And, even in that excerpt, you talked about how you didn't even know what the idea of success meant like to you at that time. And just like how over time that sort of mountaintop kept moving, and that idea of success or kept moving. Can you talk a little bit about what your idea of success, I guess, like was then and what it is now and for you?
Yeah, I guess what I read about in the book, that the first thing was I just want to get my name published. And of course, this was like late 90s. There really wasn't an internet publishing structure in place yet. So if you wanted to get published, it was in print. And there was a system of gatekeeping and a system of submissions and rejections that I think probably sounds pretty antiquated now, but I just wasn't sure that I would ever get published anywhere. And that, I think, it was a reflection of my youth and my sort of lack of self-confidence, but it also felt very real. Like, you might just keep writing forever and it's not gonna hit the right editor at the right time. And then once I did get published in, Time Out New York and writing short things about food and whatnot, then it was like, all right, well, I want a feature. I want a full-length feature. I want to be in a glossy magazine. There was always the next step, which I don't think is a pathology, to sort of get one thing and then move on to the next thing that's a little bit harder. But I was desperate to get into that magazine world, that Condé Nast, Hearst, the couple of big publishers. American Express used to publish Food and Wine magazine. These magazines where you could, maybe if you were extremely lucky, get a staff writer job or at least get freelance work. And it paid well, and you could actually support yourself on that. And all of that is gone now. But at the time when I was younger, it was like, I'm desperate to get in that cool kids club. And I know some of those cool kids, and they might throw me a little bone, but I never could quite crack it. And then once I got an opportunity to interview, and I talked to people, and they were like, this sucks. It sucks. This job sucks, And I was like, oh, okay, all right, And so it never really. I worked at Wine Spectator, but that was a little bit outside the, what I was going for was like a Condé Nast, town car, like the whole package. I thought that was what I wanted.
Is that what you want now? Well, I'm just curious, like, what do you want?
A town car?
Yeah, right. I want a town car. So what's like? Do you want to continue doing personal projects? Like, what are you interested in doing after this? I know this is like just came out, so I want to like give this its due. But I'm just curious, like, where do
I go next?
Yeah.
I mean, I would like to keep writing books. I've been able to more or less work as a writer of books and a little bit of writing on the side since 2018. I would like to keep doing it. It's not easy. It's a you're kind of, as it's the same with television, you're kind of chasing jobs and working really hard to get the job, and then hoping that the money comes through and trying to make the money last. And, you know, I don't mean to complain, because this is honestly like what I'm doing, whether or not the money is great. I'm very happy and I love it. So if I can, you know, get another nonfiction book published, if I can collaborate with someone who's got a great idea, has a great story to tell, and needs a writer to help them bring that into fruition, I would love to do that. I was sort of joking over dinner, but half serious. Like, I want to be whatever the next Prince Harry book is. I want to do that. You know, someone who's got a really high profile and has a great story to tell and needs a writer like me to help tell it. So I'll just manifest that right now.
Hell yeah.
Call me, Meghan
Amazing.
Markle.
I think we're going to open it up to audience questions, but really, really quickly, I just, for selfish reasons, the name Care and Feeding for the book, is that a Fear and Loathing reference, or is that like
Oh, it's not, but yes, it is.
Okay. Well, no, I was like, oh, it's like a drug-fueled thing, chasing the American dream.
I mean, that's an interesting, it's sort of the flip side.
It's like the
of Fear
multiverse
and
version
Loathing.
of,
Yeah, it's not, but I like that, and I will definitely use it. No, it's somebody, Kat Kinsman said to me several years ago, you know, you've really made quite a career out of the care and feeding of difficult men. And I was like, I never really, you know, thought about my career in that way, but you're right. You know, whether, you know, these two big stars and a lot of other people in publishing. And so it just kind of stuck with me. And when it came time to write the title, it was like, all right, I got it. Care and Feeding.
Cool. Questions? Yes.
Laurie, on the note of care and feeding, will you talk a little bit more, though, about the ways in which your experience coming into your own as a mother and your period as a wife and all of the personal elements, as they also relate to the title, and how that kind of folds into things.
Yeah, the question was about if you could talk a little bit about coming into, you know, yourself as a mother and as a wife, and how that factors into the title. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, there, as we talked about earlier, there are these themes in the book of parenting and ambivalence about that, and you know, being married and being ambivalent about that, and, you know, taking care of myself or taking very not good care of myself. And so there's a kind of a through line of, you know, starting out cooking for my friends in college, and then, you know, cooking for a family as a private cook, and, you know, all these different ways that food kind of, I mean, it's dangerously close to cliche, like food brings us together, you know, food, this is how we care for each other, but it's true, right? It's a way, even now, it's like, you know, I have a 16-year-old son who's like sometimes surly and doesn't really want anything to do with me, but like, I know that I'm going to make dinner for him, you know, 5 nights a week, and he's going to be really grateful for it. And that's how we don't have to talk. We don't have to make eye contact, but like, I make the food and I give it to him. And I know he loves me, and I know that I love him, and he knows that I love him. So, yeah, it's a, you know, there's many applications of the concept of care and feeding.
Sorry, that just like instantly brought me back to a part of your book where you like published things that were not for anyone else to consume, and some juicy elements.
Oh,
I'll
yes.
just leave it at
Yeah,
that.
there's a I write some stuff down that gets me in trouble.
Yep.
I love the way that you write about ambition and women's ambition. So when I hear you talk just now about like, I wanted this, and then I wanted that, and then I wanted that, and the way that you write in the book about that ambition without this sense that I feel like women are supposed to, like, we're not supposed to actually be ambitious. So I don't know. Can you just talk a little bit about like how you like allowed yourself to be ambitious, and like not just like powerful men, but like how you like kind of came into your power as a woman, as a creative person.
The question was about being a woman and ambition, and how you came into your power as a woman and being ambitious.
Yeah, I did not feel that I was in my power at all in these moments that I was writing about. You know, I would maybe say to my therapist, or I would think like, I want this magazine job or whatever. But it was very hard for me to say that to anyone who was in a position to help me do that. Or I would say it, but I would sort of, well, I know I'm not very good, but could I, you know, pitch you some stories? Or I didn't have that. I think it only came much later. really in the writing of this book to recognize, like, God, I just wanted that so bad, but I couldn't even say it to myself a lot of the time. So yeah, I mean, the way that I think I sort of came into my power was I stopped drinking, and I got sober, and I like got a little, started to take myself a little more seriously. And I was sober enough to sort of go, well, what do I want? Because I throwing myself around doing this and that and having all kinds of experiences, but I felt powerless. And I think I was in some ways. So
Just
we
two
got
more questions. I think we have time for it.
Hi. Well, first of all, I would like to say I loved this book. I read it in 2 days, and I think it is amazingly brave and raw for you to put out all of this stuff. This actually makes me weepy. I'm so happy and proud of you.
Thank you, Anne.
And I'm sure that this whole process had to be cathartic. And have there been ways that now that it's out to the public that have surprised you about people's reactions, or like different ways that you addressing and being so brutally honest with all of this stuff has helped you?
Do you want to read
Okay, so she read it in 2 days, and she was wondering if there's any sort of surprising things from people's reactions.
Yeah.
Now that, I mean, it is very, very brave to put out this book.
So, I mean, cathartic, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. I've been asked this question a lot. I don't really have a satisfying answer. I mean, it's cathartic now to have it, to hold it, and to see it. And as far as people's reactions, it's so new right now. It's only, I mean, this is Anne, and your reaction really was powerful, that we had so many, experiences in common, and, that was very gratifying. And so the little that I've heard from the general public that have read it, because it's so new, the overall theme, especially from women, has been, I really felt seen. I felt like my experience, my own sort of insecurity, or my grasping around, or my drinking, or my, weird sex stuff, whatever it is, people have felt that there was some element of their experience that they could relate to. So I'm hoping that continues to be the case as people continue to read it. Because that's, I think, more so than this is what, Tony Bourdain was like, or this is what Mario Batali was like. I mean, that's really the purpose of the book is a not famous person's story.
There was a Guardian article that came out a while ago about men not reading enough, or boys not reading enough stories by women to develop their empathy. And I thought that this, obviously I absolutely love this book, but there's so much that you taught yourself over the years being in this industry. I'm also a food person, a baker for a very long time, and the empathy that you have to kind of teach yourself as you are putting yourself through this grind every day, meeting all these different people, having all these different experiences, to be able to forgive yourself for so many moves that you've made. A lot of them were made out of survival, out of hunger, out of fear, and to be able to kind of like go through that and learn is like a really amazing thing. So I really do hope that men read this book. I know a lot of women are gonna like identify with it as much as we have, but I really hope that men kind of read this to kind of develop that empathy for themselves and for the women in their lives.
Thank you.
So I think you've really written something that is really kind of like gonna stand the test of time.
Yes, men need to read this book. Please buy 3 copies. 3 of them for men.
And buy the book. Yes.
I agree.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely.
I do not think it's a book written by a woman, by a woman, just one. And it's, from my perspective, I am a woman, but it is, it's not, I don't want it to be just a pigeonholed woman's book, because it's a book about the restaurant industry dominated by men, and entertainment industry dominated by men. So there's something in it for you too, guys. And I will say, like, half the advanced readers that I had were men. At least two of them are here right now. So thank you guys.
One more question? Okay, cool. Who's got the good question?
Just curious, with the TV angle, do you see this going to TV? It kind of feels like a Netflix series. It got a little wacky.
Yes, let's see this.
I mean,
So,
all right, there were two questions. One is, do I want to see it on TV? Yes, fuck yes. Inshallah, somebody will pick it up. I would love that. And who does my hair? I got my hair done at Bumble and Bumble today by a very talented stylist named Tador.
well, just to add to that, who would you want to play you, and also who would you want to direct? Is there like a filmmaker? No, not
Helen Cho. Director Helen Cho. As far as who plays me, I don't know. Somebody asked me this recently, and first I said Phyllis Diller because I couldn't think of anyone. I think she's dead, so
we can hologram it,
yeah.
probably.
So,
Yeah.
but maybe then I thought Amy Adams, because she did that Night Bitch, and that's my aesthetic
That's
when
a
I'm
good
not
one.
wearing a suit.
Well, thank you guys so much. Is there anything else that you want to add? I just feel like, God damn, Laurie, like this book is insane. It's insane.
No,
I feel like there's
thank
just
you.
so much, and like you were saying, I don't think it's just like, it's not a book for women. I mean, it's just like, I feel like every single person has something that you can take away from this book. It's just like about being fucking human in this like weird world as we're just like navigating all the things, So yeah, I really hope you guys check it out. And yeah, thank you so much for writing
All right.
this.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. Thank you to everyone who asked questions. Thank you to Helen for moderating such a great conversation. And thank you, Laurie, for celebrating this launch with us. So, some final reminders before we wrap up. If you're still with us on the live stream, you can buy a copy by clicking the link in the live stream description. For those of you with us tonight, if you haven't gotten your copy already, we've got plenty of extras available at the register where you checked in. We also have a couple copies of Laurie's previous book, Bourdain, and we have a few copies of World Travel, co-authored by Tony and Laurie. So definitely check those out as well if you haven't yet, for whatever reason. Laurie will be around to sign and personalize your books at the little table where my coworker Nicole is now pointing to. Thank you, Nicole. So I know that there are lots of friends and fans in the audience. We're going to ask that you all just sit tight for a second before we get her back there. And then once we're all set to go, please make sure that you gather all of your personal belongings so we can start to break down and rearrange the space. That's all. Thank you all again for coming out. Let's give these two one last round of applause.